Thanks. Hey, everybody. My name is Schuyler VanValkenburg. I'm a delegate in the legislature, and carried the amendment on the House side. And so I think my job is kind of to take you through the nuts and bolts of how this is going to work over the next couple of months, and then pass it over to everybody else to kind of talk about how you're going to have your kind of maximum level of impact as citizens, right? Which I think is really one of the exciting things about our new system, which is that it's very transparent, it's very open, and you have more of a say than you ever would. And so when you think about redistricting, it's done every 10 years. Right after a census, the census data gets sent to each 50 states, and then each state has its own process for doing it. And in most states, that means the state legislature draws the line. But that's a little misleading because we have 140 legislators, 40 in the Senate, 100 in the House, and 140 legislators do not draw the lines, right? What happens is typically whoever's in the majority party, right, appoint somebody to draw the lines. They go in a room, they draw some lines with some experts, they try to maximize their party's gain, and then they go to their caucus and they say, well, here's your lines, take them and vote for them. And so to say that the state legislature draws the lines is actually kind of a misleading way of talking about how the process typically plays out. And we could spend an hour just talking about the different ways in which gerrymandering occurs at a state legislative level across those 50 states. But of course, because of people like OneVirginia2021 and other groups across the country, we've started to have movement in some states to move to a different system, and that's looked different everywhere. California has a system, Iowa, Arizona, Michigan, now Virginia, and they all have different ways of working, right? But essentially, what Virginia's is we have a half citizen, half legislator commission, half Republicans, half Democrats. The legislators are picked by leadership in both houses and both caucuses. The citizens are picked through a kind of multi-step process. And that has already happened. They've already been picked and they're already at work. Now, in a traditional year when the census wasn't delayed because of a variety of reasons, that work would already be started, right? The lines, the information would have come in March, and this process we'd probably be voting right about now, actually. But because of the census delays, we're not getting it. I think mid-August is now what they're telling us. We've had kind of a longer period for that commission, which is actually semi-good thing. The commission has been able to be picked, settle down, start doing their work. And they're in the process of figuring out how do they pick lawyers? How do they figure out who draws the maps? And then when that data drops in August, they're on the clock. They have a certain amount of time. I believe it's 45 days. I haven't checked off the top of my head. They have a certain amount of time. They have to draw maps. They send it to the legislature. We have an up or down vote. We can't change anything. If we vote yes, there's your maps for the next 10 years in the for the state legislature. If we vote no, they go back and do it again. They draw new maps. We would then have a second vote. If we voted no that second time, it would get kicked to the Virginia Supreme Court. And then there would be a process in place for the Virginia Supreme Court. I think the thing to emphasize in all of this, because of what you're doing here, I think there's a lot of things that make this better than the status quo. A lot of things. For instance, we now have a minimum of 8 people drawing maps in public versus 1 in a backdoor room. But the thing for today is it's all in public. You all have input. They have to do this stuff publicly on the front end and on the back end. The media can shine a light on all of their meetings. You can be on all their meetings. And that, I think, is a feature, not a bug, so that when you see these votes that they have to take for things like how to pick lawyers, how to figure out how to draw the maps, should the commission draw the maps, or should they hire professionals to draw maps? You get to have a say in that you get to put pressure on them. The media gets to put pressure on them. I think that creates a much better process. And so I would just highlight, to kind of conclude, and I guess I can answer questions too if that's on tap, but to conclude, I think for the purposes of today, the transparency piece cannot be emphasized enough. Put as much pressure on the front end and on the back end on these folks as you can, because that is how we get better maps, right? That is how we get maps that do not break the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's how we get maps that are not partisan gerrymandered, right? That's how we get maps that reflect communities. That's how we get maps that are competitive. That's how we get maps where folks like me have to go knock on your door to try to win your vote, because if we don't, we lose. And so thank you for being on this on a Sunday. Gerrymander, I could talk all about this, but I know I'm a nerd and I am not representative of the of the community at large, and finding all this stuff super interesting. But thank you for having me, and I'll gladly answer any questions you have if that's what we're doing, or if you'd like me to stick around, or I might have skipped something.
Well, thank you so much, Delegate VanValkenburg. We really appreciate you for being with us. We're going to save questions until the end, but what would be really helpful, Delegate, is if folks have questions, they can go ahead and put them in the Q&A box. And if you'd like to answer some of those live, that will be really helpful. I think it's important as we talk about transparency and how we can get the public engaged in redistricting, to have a legislator such as yourself to tell the citizens here in the Commonwealth just how important their voices are in this process. And so thank you for being with us again, Delegate VanValkenburg.